Chapter 37. Through sacrifice to an ancient sage, scholars revive the old ceremony in Nanking. A filial son is seen off by his friends to search for his father in Sichuan. Dr. Yu received his guests, and after an exchange of courtesies, they sat down. We have come in connection with the question of a master of sacrifice for the great ceremony at Taipo's temple, said Qi Hing Fang. Since Taipo was such a great sage, we all feel it was only fitting that the master of sacrifice should be a man of spotless character. So we are formally requesting you, sir, to perform this part. You do me too much honor, replied Dr. Yu. But of course I shall be glad to take part in such an important ceremony. Has the date been decided yet? The 1st of the 4th month, said she, and we would like you to go to the temple the day before in order to spend a night in purification before the ceremony. When Dr. Yu had consented, the tea was served. Then his guests left to proceed together to Tu's riverside house. I'm afraid we are all still 1 or 2 short, remarked Qi when they had sat down. It so happens that a friend from my county has just arrived, said Tu. He called Xiang Lao Chai in and introduced him. They bowed to each other. We hope you will honor us by taking part in the sacrifice, sir, said Qi. I shall be delighted to participate in such an important ceremony, replied Xiang. Then the guests took their leave. On the 29th of the 3rd month, Qi Heng Shan assembled his party and left the city through the south gate. With him were Tu Shaoqing, Ma Chun Shang, Qi Wei Hixiao, Jin Teng Ye, Lu Hui Shi, Hisin Teng Qi, Chu Hisian Fu, Yu Ho Sheng, Lu Hisin Ho, Yu Ken Qi, Chu Ko Tian Shen, Qing Lan Qiang, Kuo Te Pi, Hisao Qin Hisun, Chu Hisin, Yin Shao, Qi Tian Yi, Qin Yu Lu, Xiang Qi, Wu Shu, and Xiang Lao Shai. Soon they were joined by Chuang Shao Kuang. A steep flight of a dozen steps led to the main entrance to Taipo's temple, on the left of which were the 9 houses. On the left of which was the house where the sacrificial meat was prepared. Just inside the entrance was a large open space, at the far end of which another steep flight of steps led to the 3 gates. These opened into a courtyard flanked by 2 corridors, containing shrines to some minor sages. At the end of the courtyard were 5 great halls, the largest of which held Taipo's shrine, with a table before it bearing incense urns and candlesticks. Behind this was a yard with 5 pavilions and a library of 3 rooms on either side. As soon as the scholars passed through the central gate, they saw a placard on high with the inscription in gilt characters, "The Temple of Taipo." Passing through a second door in the east corner and walking down the eastern corridor past the main building, they looked up to see another placard bearing the gilt inscription, "The Pavilion for Studying Ceremony." They sat down for a while in the library on the east. Then Qi Hing Shan opened the door of one of the pavilions and went upstairs with Ma Chun Shang, Wu Shu, and Chu Hisian Fu to fetch the musical instruments. Some of these they placed in the hall and some in the courtyard. In the hall they also set a prayer board, and beside the incense table a banner for directing the musicians. In the courtyard they set torches, and beside the second door ewers and napkins. Qin Su Fu and Pao Ting Hisi had brought 36 boy dancers and musicians to play the jade chime, lyre, cithern, pipe, drum, sonorous wood, bronze tiger, reed organ, big bell, flute, small bells, and stone chimes. They came in now to greet the scholars, and Qi Hing Shan gave the boys the vermilion flutes and pheasant feathers for their dance. In the afternoon, Dr. Yu arrived, to be ushered in by Chuang, Qi, Ma, and Tu. After drinking tea, they changed into ceremonial dress, and the same 4 men led the way to inspect the sacrificial meat. That night they purified themselves in the library. At the 5th watch the next morning, the gate of the temple was thrown wide open, and they all got up. Candles and lamps were lit at both ends of the hall and the courtyard, inside and outside each door and along the corridors. The torches were also lit. Qi Hing Shan called upon the master of sacrifice, Dr. Yu, and the second master, Chuang Shao Kuang. But when he asked for a 3rd master of sacrifice, no one would accept the honor. It should be Mr. Qi or Mr. Tu, they said. We shall be ushers, replied Qi. Mr. Ma is from Qi Kiang. Let him be the 3rd. Ma Chun Shang declined repeatedly, but the others carried him by main force to sit with Dr. Yu and Chuang. When Qi and Tu had taken these 3 to inspect the preparation of the meat, they came back to ask Qin Tengya to act as herald, Wu Shu to signal with a banner, Xiang Lao Chai to recite the prayers, Chi Wei Hisiao, Hisin Tung Chi, and Yu Ho Sheng to present wine, Chu Hisian Fu, Lu Hisian Ho, and Yu Kan Chi to present jade, Chu Ko Tian Shin, Qing Lan Chiang, and Kuo Tian Pi to present silk, Hisao Chin Hisun, Chu Hisin, and Siang Chi to present sacrificial viands. Lu Huishi was requested to aid the herald. This done, they led all the scholars outside the second gate. Then the drums sounded 3 times for the sacrifice. Jin Sufu and Pao Ting Hisi led in the players on the jade chime, lyre, cithern, pipe, drum, sonorous wood, bronze tiger, reed organ, big bell, flute, small bells, and stone chimes, as well as the 36 dancing boys. They took their places at both ends of the hall in the courtyard. Then Qin Tengya, followed by Lu Huishi, entered the hall. Coming to a halt, he announced, "Let all taking part attend to their duties." The musicians picked up their instruments. "Take your places," cried Qin. Wu Shu with his banner led the men bearing wine, jade, and silk to the east of the courtyard. Then he conducted Xiang Lao Chai, who was to read the prayers, to take his place before the prayer table on the dais. Next he led the men bearing grain and sacrificial viands to the west of the courtyard, and took his stand below them. "Music!" cried Qin. Music sounded from the hall in the courtyard. "Welcome the spirit," cried Qin. With scented candles in both hands, the ushers walked out, bowing to welcome the spirit. "Let the music cease," cried Qin. At once it died away in both the hall and the courtyard. "Let the votaries take their places." The ushers went to summon Chuang Shaoqiang and Ma Chun Shang, who took their places to the left of the incense table in the courtyard. "Let the master of sacrifice take his place." The ushers summoned Dr. Yu, who took his place in the middle of the courtyard. Chi and Tu stood one on the right and one on the left side of the incense table. "The ablution," announced Chi. He and Tu led the master of sacrifice to wash his hands and return. "The master of sacrifice approaches the incense table," announced Chi. There was an aloe-wood urn holding red flags on the incense table, from which Tu now took a flag bearing the word music. Dr. Yu went up to the incense table. "Kneel and offer incense," cried Chi. "Pour a libation on the ground. Prostrate yourself 4 times. Return to your place." Tu took another flag bearing the word silence. "Play the air to delight the spirit," cried Qin. Qin Sufu conducted as the musicians in the hall played. Presently the music ceased. "The first sacrifice," cried Qin. Lu Huishi carried out from the shrine a placard on which was written, "First Sacrifice." With Wu Shu carrying his banner before them, the ushers led the master of sacrifice forward. And as they passed down the east of the courtyard, leading Chi Wei Hisiao bearing wine, Chu Hisian Fu bearing jade, and Chu Ko Tian Shen bearing silk, men came out from the hall to welcome the master of sacrifice. When they came to the west, Hisao Chin Hisun, bearing grain, and Chi Tianya bearing viands, led the master of sacrifice down the west side, passing in front of the incense table and turning east. When they entered the main hall, the ushers took their place at the right and left of the table. The men bearing wine, jade, and silk stood on the left, while those bearing grain and viands stood on the right. "Take your places," cried Chi. "Kneel." Dr. Yu knelt before the table. "Offer wine." Chi Wei Hisiao knelt to pass the wine to Dr. Yu, who placed it on the table. "Offer jade." Chu Hisian Fu knelt to pass the jade to Dr. Yu, who placed it on the table. "Offer silk." Chu Ko Tian Shin knelt to pass the silk to Dr. Yu, who placed it on the table. "Offer grain." Hisao Chin Hisun knelt to pass the grain to Dr. Yu, who placed it on the table. "Offer viands." Chi Tian Yi knelt to pass the viands to Dr. Yu, who placed them on the table. The sacrifice at an end, the votaries withdrew to their places, and Chi bade them prostrate themselves 4 times. "The first song and dance of supreme virtue," cried Qin. Clear music sounded from the upper part of the hall, and the 36 boys with vermilion flutes and pheasant feathers advanced to dance. The dance at an end, the herald announced, "Let all kneel below the steps as the prayer is read." Xiang Lao Chai knelt before the prayer tablet and read the prayer. "Return to your places," cried Jin. "Rise," cried Qi. Wu Shu, the ushers, and those who had borne offerings conducted the master of sacrifice off by the west. Dr. Yu returned to his place and the others to theirs. "The second sacrifice," cried Qi. Lu Hue Shi fetched from the shrine another placard bearing the words, "Second Sacrifice." Then the same ceremony was repeated. Chuang Shao Kuang as second master of sacrifice, and different men bearing offerings. "The last sacrifice," cried Shin. Lu Hue Shi fetched from the shrine another placard bearing the words, "Last Sacrifice." And again the same ceremony was repeated, with Ma Chun Shang as the third master of sacrifice, and different men presenting offerings. "Entertain the spirit with a feast and music," said Chin. The ushers led the master of sacrifice in again by the east. The ushers led the master of sacrifice in again by the east to kneel before the table. "Music," cried Chin. From the hall and the courtyard all the instruments sounded together. When the music ceased, Qi bade them prostrate themselves 4 times, then rise. "Return to your places," cried Chin. The ushers led Dr. Yu back by the west to his place as master of sacrifice, then returned to their own positions. "Remove the offerings," cried Chin. Chu took another red flag bearing the words, "Ring the bell," and music rang out loudly again. To the strains of this music, the ushers led Dr. Yu from his place by the east to the main hall to kneel before the table. Qi bade him prostrate himself 4 times, then rise. "Return to your places," cried Chin. The ushers led Dr. Yu back by the west to his place as master of sacrifice, and returned to their own positions. Chu took another flag bearing the words, "Silence." "Drink the propitious wine, receive the sacrificial meat," cried Chin. The ushers led the master of sacrifice and the second master of sacrifice and the last master of sacrifice to kneel before the table, drink the propitious wine, and receive the sacrificial meat. "Return to your places," cried Chin. The 3 masters of sacrifice withdrew. "Let silk be burned," cried Chin. Then Chu Ko, Tian Xing, Qing Lan Qiang, and Q Te Pi burnt the silk. "The ceremony is ended," cried Chin. They cleared away the sacrificial vessels and musical instruments, changed out of their ceremonial costumes, and gathered in one of their buildings at the back. Qin Su Fu and Pao Ting Hisi also conducted the musicians from the hall and the 36 young dancers to the 2 libraries at the back. The participants in the great sacrifice included 3 masters of sacrifice, 1 herald, 1 prayer reader, 1 herald's assistant, 2 ushers, 1 banner bearer, and 3 men each in charge of wine, jade, silk, grain, and viands. There were also 2 men to direct the 12 musicians and 36 boy dancers, making a total of 76 participants. Now the cook dressed an ox and 4 sheep to serve for the sacrificial viands and some vegetables. 16 tables were laid, 8 downstairs for the 24 scholars, and 8 in the 2 libraries at the sides to entertain the others. After feasting for half a day, Dr. Yu mounted a seat and chair and returned to the city. Some of the other scholars left by seat and chair, or others on foot. Their path was lined with people who had brought their old folk and children to throng the temple and watch. They were crying out for joy. "What makes you so pleased?" asked Ma Chun Shang with a smile. "We are Nanking born and Nanking bred," they replied, "and some of us are over 70 or 80, but we have never seen a ceremony like this or heard music like this before. The old folk told us the gentleman who was the master of sacrifice is a sage who has come back to the earth, so we all wanted to see him." Then, with joy in their hearts, the scholars made their way back to the city. A few days later, Chi Wei Hisiao, Hisao Po Chuan, Hisin Tung Ye, Hisin Tung Chi, and Chin bade goodbye to Dr. Yu and returned to Yang Chao. Ma Chun Shang and Chu Hisian Fu called to take their leave of Tu Shaoqing before going back to Chiking. Upon entering his riverside house, they found Tu and Xiang Lao Chai sitting there with another man. Chu Hisian Fu gave a start. "That is the iron-armed Chang who tricked my uncles with the false head," he thought. "What is he doing here?" They exchanged bows. Iron-armed Chang was also embarrassed by this meeting and did not know where to look. After drinking tea, Ma and Chu expressed his regret at parting, then took their leave. Chu saw them to the gate. "What do you know of that fellow, Chang?" asked Chu. "His name is Chang Chun Min, and he comes from Tian Shang." Smiling, Chu briefly described all that Iron-Armed Chang had done in Shiking. "The less you have to do with him, the better," he concluded. "So be on your guard, Xiaoqing." "I see," replied Tu. When his friends had left, Tu went back into the house. "Were you once known as Iron-Armed Chang?" he asked. Iron-Armed Chang turned red. "When I was a youngster," he admitted. He gave no clear account of himself, and Tu did not press him. But realizing that the game was up now that he had been exposed, Iron-Armed Chang left a few days later for Tian Chang, taking Xiang Lao Chai with him. He Sao Chin He Sun and his two friends had run up bills at the shop and eating house, and could not leave till they paid. So they asked Tu to help them out. After receiving a few taels from him, they went home. Mr. Sung decided to go back to Hu Kuang, and brought a portrait for Tu to inscribe. This Tu did in his presence, then saw him off. On his way back, he met Wu Shu walking to his house. "I haven't seen you for a long time," said Tu. "Where have you been?" "There's an examination the other day for all 6 classes in our college," replied Wu. "I came first in the first rank again." "Good for you," said Tu. "That is nothing, but it gave me the chance to see something quite extraordinary." "What was that?" The test was ordered by the court to reclassify all the students in the college. Therefore, all 6 classes were examined together, and the instructions were issued to search everybody from head to foot, just as in the district examinations. We were tested on 2 passages from the 4 books and 1 from the 5 classics, and one fellow who had studied the spring and autumn annuals took a printed copy in with him. Nothing strange in that, you may say, but when he went out to the latrine, he tucked this crib in his paper by mistake and handed it to the examiner. Luckily for him, Dr. Yu was the examiner that day, and another official to help him invigilate. When the doctor picked up the paper and saw the crib, he stuffed it at once in his boot. The other invigilator asked what it was. "Nothing," said Dr. Yu. When the student came in again, the doctor slipped the crib back to him. "Take it," he said. You shouldn't have handed it in just now with your paper. It was lucky that I saw it and not someone else." The student sweated to think what might have happened. When the results came out, he was in the 2nd rank, so he went to thank Dr. Yu, but the doctor insisted that he didn't know him. "I never spoke to you," said Dr. Yu. "You must have mistaken someone else for me." I happened to be there to thank him that day too, and I saw all of this. When the student left, I asked, "Why did you deny helping him, sir? Was it wrong for him to come and thank you?" "All scholars have self-respect," said Dr. Yu. "He felt he had to thank me, but if I had acknowledged helping him, he would have had no face left. I didn't know the fellow, so I asked his name, but the doctor wouldn't tell me. Don't you agree, sir, that few men would act in such an extraordinary way?" "The old fellow was always doing things like that," replied Tu. "He did something even more amusing," said Wu Shu. "You know he married that slave girl who came with his son's bride to his steward, Yin. Well, because that scoundrel realized that this wasn't the sort of yamen where you make money, the day before yesterday he gave notice. Dr. Yu hasn't asked for a cent but given him the slave girl for nothing. Anybody would have demanded that he pay for her, and set a high price too, now that he was taking her away. But not Dr. Yu. Of course you may leave, he said, but you can't have any money for food and lodging. He gave him another 10 taels. As soon as he had let him go, he recommended Yin for a job with a county magistrate. Have you ever heard of anything so funny?" "Scoundrels like that have absolutely no conscience," replied Tu. "But it wasn't because he wanted a reputation for charity that the old man gave him silver twice. That's what's so rare." He kept Wu Shu to a meal. After leaving Tu, Wu Shu had gone no further than Lucky Crossing Bridge when he met a man in a square cap and old cotton gown, silk girdle and straw sandals. His luggage hung in 2 bundles from a shoulder pole. His hair was grey and he was haggard and thin. The man set down his baggage and he bowed to Wu. "Mr. Ko," exclaimed Wu, "it is 3 years since we parted at Chiang Ning. Where have you been all this time?" "That is a long story," replied the other. "Let us sit down in the tea-house," suggested Wu. They went to the tea-house and sat down. "I have been traveling the country looking for my father," said Kuo. "Someone told me he was in Chiang Nan, so I have been there 3 times. Now I hear that he is not in Chiang Nan but Sichuan, where he has shaved his head and become a monk. I am therefore going to Sichuan to look for him." Wu Shu exclaimed in sympathy. "This 1,000-mile journey will not be easy, sir," he said. "I know one of the magistrates in the Xi'an prefecture, a Mr. Yu, who used to be a colleague of Dr. Yu of the Imperial College. I shall ask Dr. Yu to give you a letter of introduction to him. You will pass that way on your journey, and if you are short of funds, he should be able to help you. I am a rough country fellow, objected Kuo. How can I call on an official in the Imperial College? Never mind, said Wushu. A few steps from here is Tu Shaoqing's house. I'll take you there to wait while I get you this letter. Tu Shaoqing? Is that the open-handed gentleman from Tianshang who recommended for office? Is that the open-handed gentleman from Tianshang who was recommended for office but declined? That's the man. I would like to meet him. They paid the bill, left the tea house, and walked together to Tu's house. Coming out to greet them, Tu bowed. What is this gentleman's honorable name? He asked. This is Mr. Kuo Tianshan, replied Wu. For 20 years he has traveled the country in search of his father, so he is known as filial Kuo. Upon hearing this, Tu bowed once more and made Kuo take the seat of honor. How is it that you have not heard from your worthy father for so long? He asked. Kuo appeared tongue-tied. He was an official in Kiangsi who was surrendered to Prince Ning, whispered Wu. He had to run away. Tu was amazed and respected Kuo for his behavior. He made him put his baggage down. You must spend the night here, sir, he said. You may leave tomorrow. The whole empire knows of Tu Shaoqing's liberality, replied Kuo. I won't stand on ceremony, but will gladly stay. Tu went to the inner chambers to ask his wife to have Kuo's clothes washed and starched, and a good meal prepared for him. When he returned to his guests, Wu mentioned the letter of introduction for which he wished to ask Dr. Yu. That is easy, said Tu. Please wait here, Mr. Kuo, while Wu Shu and I fetch the letter. But to know what followed, you must read the next chapter.